Hi guys, how are you all today morning? Good morning. Today is 5th September 2023. My name is T.S.V. Raghavan and I live in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, India. This is my spiritual vlog on YouTube. Hardan, Haribol, TRSV nectar. Hardan, HARDAN, Hardan. Haribol, TRSV nectar, NECTAR, nectar. In this particular vlog, we discuss about the knowledge and information that we have gleaned through the study of spiritual books, scriptures, contemplation on the material universe, and meditation on the spiritual universe. This particular video in this vlog is no exception to that rule. In fact, it is a mere continuation of all that we have been doing in all my previous videos. Kindly subscribe to this vlog and press the bell icon so that I may keep reminding you of all my future and past videos. So let us discuss about the knowledge or topic for discussion of today's video. In the past few videos, we have been discussing and analyzing in detail the connection between the three subtle bodies of a human living entities with the Kundalini serpent and chakra of the fourth gross body of the same living human entity, plus the three modes of material nature being good or goodness, passion, and ignorance prescribed by Sri Krishna, the Lord and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the false ego that makes a human living entity identify himself or herself with his or her body and not the soul. We all know by now that when our actual identity of the individual spirit soul gets in contact with this huge material world, this material world gets visibly irritated and begins to wrap four layers of material body around that spirit soul. These four layers are: the first layer of causal body of intelligence and logic, the second body of astral mind of feelings and emotions, the third body of etheric senses, namely sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, and the fourth gross body made up of four natural elements of the material kind, namely air, fire, water, and earth. The three layers of subtle bodies, namely the causal body of intelligence, the astral body of mind, and the etheric body of senses, are made up of the first natural material element known as ether. Now we are talking about the relationship between the Kundalini serpent and chakra and the three subtle bodies. We all know by now that the Kundalini serpent is a reservoir of energy which is subtle and invisible to the naked eye of every human living entity and is inside the base or the under the base of the spinal cord of the human living entity. When aroused through the performance of various types of yoga, the same Kundalini serpent wakes up and begins slithering down seven regular interval chakras or stations which are placed across the same spinal cord. We have already talked in detail about these seven chakras. We are only going to concentrate on the first two chakras or the two base chakras of the spinal cord, namely Mooladhara, the first root chakra, and the second Swadhisthana, which is the second chakra, which is activated by performing a yoga known as Tantra Yoga. We already know that the first root Mooladhara chakra is initially activated with what is known as Hatha Yoga. Once through the Hatha Yoga, this Kundalini serpent, which is lying tightly coiled under the base of the spinal cord for times immemorial, is activated. It wakes up and slowly starts slithering through the vein of the spinal cord. In that process, it comes to the first Mooladhara or root chakra, which has already been activated by this Hatha Yoga. Because this is the first station, this Mooladhara chakra has at its disposal the complete energy or untapped energy or reservoir of untapped energy of the Kundalini serpent. This Mooladhara is not so evolved as the future chakras of the same spinal cord, though it has at its disposal the complete energy. It is incapable of exploiting it completely. Hence, this Mooladhara chakra becomes only physical in nature. It concentrates only on the gross body of the human living entity. Looking well built, strong, muscular, powerful, beautiful, attractive, handsome, and things like that are what this Mooladhara chakra is quite capable of. It cannot think beyond this. It concentrates completely on the gross body of this human living entity. It cannot think cerebrally or mentally. It has no feelings, emotions, intelligence, logic, etc. The second chakra is known as the Swadhisthana chakra. Swadhisthana means delicious, that is, one that is palatable and enjoyable. This Swadhisthana chakra is slightly superior to the root Mooladhara chakra. It is activated through a yoga called Tantra Yoga. When the human living entity performs Tantra Yoga, this Kundalini serpent, which was hitherto resting on the root Mooladhara chakra, wakes up again and begins slithering through the vein of the spinal cord to come and rest at the Swadhisthana chakra. This Swadhisthana chakra is under the umbilical cord and above the root Mooladhara chakra. The root Mooladhara chakra is situated behind the anus of the human living entity, that is, the base of the human living entity. Whereas this Swadhisthana chakra is lying just behind the genitals of the human living entity. Delicious means that which makes one happy. When one becomes happy and feels a pleasurable sensation, a chemical called dopamine is extracted out of the brain of the gross body of the same human living entity. This deliciousness or happiness is felt by the human living entity while performing sex and getting an orgasm or in indulging in some favorite hobby or bodybuilding exercises, sports, and other such activities. Whatever gives pressure to the gross body and the subtle bodies of a human living entity is known as Swadhisthana or delicious. Now, Mooladhara or root chakra and Swadhisthana or delicious chakra are a pair of the bottom chakras of a human living entity, and they are considered to be a pair and totally physical, or even if they are on the subtle side, they are connected to the etheric body of senses alone. This etheric body of senses is directly connected to the gross body of the living entity. The gross body and the etheric body of senses go side by side, as a result of which the etheric senses of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch are directly felt or given an outlet into the material world by that human living entity through its own sense organs in the gross body, which are two eyes for sight, two ears for hearing, two nostrils for smell, one tongue for taste, and the complete skin and the genitals for touch. So, these etheric senses attract the gross body of a human, a living entity first. Now, in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna has explained that we have five evils or necessary evils that plague every one of us living entities throughout our lifetime in a particular birth. These five evils are known as kama or lust, krodha or anger, moha or illusion, lobha or greed, and ahankara, which is ego. Ego means false ego, which identifies with the body of the living entity, whether this body is subtle or gross. Now, of these, at least two are totally sensuous in nature, that is, the kama or lust, and krodha, that is anger. Greed is mental and cerebral. Same is illusion, and ego is already a catalyst which bridges the gap between the layers of the body of a human living entity. Now, if a particular living entity concentrates his or her lifetime completely on the sensual side of life, he or she is happy getting connected only to the etheric body of senses. Vibrations come from all the three subtle bodies and are transmitted to the mass tissue of brain in the gross body. When a living entity prefers to listen only to the vibrations of the etheric senses, then the brain processes these transmissions from the etheric body of senses and further allows them to percolate down the gross body of this living entity. In that case, the actions and reactions of that living entity are based only on the vibrations from the etheric body of senses. Here, lust and anger take over this living entity's psyche completely. Almost 75 to 80% of the society, in fact, the other 22, spends almost 90 to 95% of its time and energy around the vibrations of these etheric senses. Or you may say that when a person gets evolved, he spends only 50 to 75% of his or her time and energy on the vibrations from the etheric body of senses, and that makes him or her lusty or angry. However, when the same living entity gets more and more intelligent, experienced, and evolved, he or she may use his or her brain to process the vibrations from the astral body of mind, feelings, and senses. In such a case, his or her lust and anger transform gradually into emotions, feelings, and other such more subtle ways of life or thoughts or views of that living entity. In such a case, the two root chakras, namely Mooladhara and the Swadhisthana chakra, do not remain so base or sensual in nature. They start thinking through their mind of emotions and feelings. A person who was totally lusty in his or her dealings with the world may suddenly try to get evolved and to develop feelings of emotion or other such attributes to live his or her life more meaningfully. Here, lust or the physical attraction towards the opposite sex or towards any other physical object gradually turns platonic and becomes true platonic love. Here, this living entity tries to think laterally. So naturally, his or her animal behavior, base behavior, and anger take a back seat. So does lust. The same person who was only lusty towards the opposite sex or to some physical object suddenly tries to look behind the gross body and the etheric senses of the same living entity, which was just a physical attraction to this living entity. In that case, his or her lust for the same living opposite sex which he or she was initially attracted to physically turns into platonic love and romance. Such is the case with those evolved living entities who transform their attraction for anything in the material world into a love or true attraction through the mind of feelings and emotions. He or she goes romantic and poetic, depending upon the intelligence, destiny, karma, or otherwise of the same living entity. He or she tries to show his or her love, attraction, lust, etc. in a more positive and poetic fashion. However, when the same person whose Mooladhara chakra or Swadhisthana chakra was attracted to a particular foreign object in the sensual or the emotional way, tries to go and think logically through his or her causal body of intelligence and logic, then the same living entity finds a new way of attraction for the same foreign object. Here, gone are the feelings of senses, lust, platonic love, emotions, feelings, etc. Only the causal body or vibrations from the causal body of logic and intelligence remain. In such a case, the lust and the platonic love for a foreign object takes a back seat and logic takes over. In such a case, the same living entity thinks in a different way. Vibrations from the causal body of intelligence and logic take importance when they are being processed by the same brain. This is very, very rare. On an average, human living entities think only sensually, but some of them think with emotions and feelings, and only 5% think on a causal level. This is extremely rare in the sense that even among the most evolved of human living entities, several slip down to either emotional or sensual level. Very few think from the causal body of intelligence. Swami Vasishtha, the Brahma Rishi in the spiritual arm of our Hindu mythology, was one such living entity who thought about all his feelings with his causal body of intelligence and logic and its vibrations. That is precisely the reason why he could not be enticed by beautiful apsaras from Lord Indra and made to look lustily or with love and feelings and emotions towards beautiful nymphs, and this helped him succeed in meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and thus become a Brahma Rishi. But Though this did not happen to such an exalted rishi as sage Vishwamitra. He fell towards the astral body of mind, feelings, and emotions, plus the sensual lust when he came across a nymph called Menaka from the kingdom of Lord Indra, who wanted to stop sage Vishwamitra's meditation and thus prevent him from becoming all powerful. This resulted in sage Vishwamitra falling down to an ordinary living entity who is lustily attracted towards a foreign object or towards uh, an opposite sex. In fact, there are cases where Lord Shiva, one of the primeval gods of the triumvirate, fell in love with Mohini, the incarnation of the other of the primeval gods called Lord Vishnu, who incarnated as a celestial nymph called Mohini. So lusty did Lord Shiva get when he saw Mohini that he wanted to have sexual pleasure with her. The result of such copulation or cohabitation was the birth of another god called Swami Ayyappan, who is a mixture of the powers of Lord Shiva and the powers of Lord Vishnu. Swami Ayyappa is considered to be a very powerful deity who is residing in a series of mountains called Shabarimalai in the border of Kerala and Tamil Nadu in India and is ardently worshipped by millions of devotees from all around the world. Even here, when a person goes to worship Swami Ayyappa, that person must totally discard lust or sensual pleasures for at least 1 month when he goes to visit Swami Ayyappa in the Shabarimalai. This is very important for all of us to understand that if we want to get evolved, self realized, liberated from this repeated cycle of birth and death, and finally get delivered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we must eschew the sensuous pleasure and concentrate only on the causal body of intelligence and logic and the vibrations thereof, which are transmitted to the brain. When we prefer only these vibrations, then our brain, which is just an instrument, processes such vibrations and the juice extracted out of such processing percolates down our own gross body and we react accordingly. In such a case, the reaction from a side is most evolved and almost spiritual in nature. The base chakras of Mooladhara and Swadhisthana, if listen to the vibrations of causal body of logic and intelligence, then they are likely to get evolved enough to, high, to rise to a higher level and reach the other chakras in the spinal cord of we, the human living entities. That is all for the present in this particular video. Kindly listen to this, understand this, chew on it, masticate on what I have said, and please try to find out any logic that may be hiding behind my not so talented way of expressing my thoughts. Please give me your own expert opinions, thoughts, ideas, and views so that I may blend everything together for the sake of this society. Before concluding, let me remind you that I am also a published author with Amazon Kindle and paperback. I write on spiritualism, fiction, and assorted subjects. Spiritualism happens to be my favorite subject. Till we meet in my next video, it is good morning from TSV Raghavan.